No, it wasn't pretty, and I'm not sure they're back yet, but Houston gets the win over TCU in Fort Worth, and I guess that's good.
You are Locked On Coogs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Coogs, the daily podcast about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach Parker Ainsworth, and whether you're a Houston fan or just a hater that came to stop by, thank you for making Locked On Coogs your first listen of the post-game, first listen the next morning, anywhere in between. Making the Locked On Sports Podcast Network, the number one sports podcast network in the world. And I can't wait to try and figure out how to make sense of what just happened to Houston. Houston wins 79-70 and covers the 8.5-point spread from our buddies over at FanDuel. That missed layup at the end from TCU actually kind of came into play in that. But I want to talk some about the big freshman performances. And then we'll also talk about like the foul trouble and things that went wrong in this game. We will end by giving some nightcaps, as this is a later in the evening kind of show. Not quite late in the evening. It's some of those Utah games are going to be next couple weeks, but it's a late in the evening kind of show. So thank you for the live audience here in the live post-game edition of Locked on Cougs. Now listen, we're going to get into the ugly, going to get into all of it. I will say I thought that two of the freshmen played stellar games and really righted a lot of wrongs for Houston in this one. Chris Cenac, for all the flack we gave him at previous points thus far this season, had 14 of Houston's 31 total rebounds. He really seemed very, very comfortable in this matchup. He had 5 on the offensive end, which was a particular sticking point for me. So again, if I'm going to be critical when those don't happen, I need to be giving praise when they do. Chris, I thought, played very well defensively. He had a couple mistakes. He's a freshman. Those happen. But on the whole, I would point out that, he had 10 rebounds in the first half. He had 13 of 21 rebounds for Houston at one point. Again, like I said, he finished with 14 rebounds, and Houston had just the 31 total. That's roughly half. I teach history, not math. That's roughly half. And I think he was also integral on offense and spacing the floor. He went 1 of 3 from behind the arc, but I saw them, have to adjust to where he was with the basketball at different points. I thought that was an important part as well. I also think, if we're being blunt in this game, we'll talk about JoJo Tugler throughout. So I don't mean to say that hey, what's that? It's at Troy Plus, the Troy Plus. Welcome, Troy Plus. I would point out that I feel like part of Chris's play came from JoJo not playing well, not being available. I would also point out that I feel like, Chase McCarty's injury played a part of this too. Chase McCarty had a left-hand injury. They tried to cast up and then tape up and play, and he ultimately didn't get to go play, or he played briefly and then came back out. Khalifa Sacco was in his own foul trouble. It was a happy whistle in this game, but ultimately Chris Cenac, I think, stepped up in a lot of those kinds of ways. And we've been kind of looking for that out of Chris a lot in really Big 12 play. It feels like he had a great Auburn game, a couple big other non-conference games, but in Big 12 play, I feel like he's kind of gotten schemed out or physicaled out. He had if we're being blunt, a not so great showing against Tech over the weekend. A few days of film and practice, some time in Lubbock to sit on it, because frankly, I didn't get out of Lubbock for a minute. And then honestly, they go from there, and then he has this performance, and I don't think those are disconnected. I also would point out that in the middle of there somewhere, I think it was the Monday availability, Sampson laid out bluntly that David Punch is going to be a focal point of what they were doing in Houston, and getting him stopped that was Chris Cenac's assignment for large stretches of this game. All of that, I think, goes together to say that, like, Chris got coached hard between Saturday and now, and I think it showed through in his much more important or elevated or impressive play on Wednesday night. The show still goes through Kingston. I think that's no secret there. Kingston had a Kingston kind of night, 25 points on 16 field goal attempts. He was 7-7 from the free throw line. He also had 5 assists, had a handful of rebounds. I think the big thing that was interesting about Kingston is he had 4, first 12 minutes of the game turnovers and nearly had a fifth there at the end against the press. He had to call timeout to avoid it. And really, you expect a freshman point guard in conference play once they're game planning and scheming at the level they do in conference play to have a few. Sure, that was something he's kind of not had to this point. And I think that was why that was more shocking or more eye opening there. But Kingston, and has 25 points. There was a stretch in the second half where Houston went. Look, in the first 7 minutes of the second half, Houston had just 7 points, and two of them were or 6 points, and two of those 6 were technical free throws. They actually carried over from the first half because Jamie Dixon and TCU got a technical to end the first half. And to kind of break that drought, Kingston was able to attack the cup, doing what we call like the HB dive kind of look, right? We talk about it with Jamal Shed a lot, but like where he spaced the floor, you stand there, you stand there. He knows where his help will come from, and he knows he can dish it out, and he just attacks the rim, right? And Kingston had a couple of those looks. He had a nice little layup. He had a miss fade, was a good look. Came down and hit a straightaway three from the top of the key, no hesitation on it. All those things looked pretty strong. And so those were all impressive things to see. And again, he continues to impress in those kinds of ways. Freshmen stepping on this, road atmosphere, conference game, kind of an odd week where you don't get out of Lubbock on time. You don't really have the easiest trip to Fort Worth because of the weather in DFW. You kind of have to navigate all of that, awkward practice schedules, things being changed. And frankly, TCU is playing at home, playing with house money is a no-lose situation for TCU in the sense that, like, no one expected them to win this game. They're 8.5-point dogs. They came into a blackout kind of night and hoorah and all that kind of stuff. Those freshmen, I think, it was important to see them step up in this moment. Chris, again, a guy we hadn't seen doing a Big 12 play. We're, still looking for some of that out of Isaiah. Isaiah had good moments. He had low moments. We are still looking for some of that other guys. Milos played 39 minutes tonight, and I love Milos. He won us the Cincinnati game. I said the other day, I think that there are like things he does this team that are hard to measure statistically, but there were also stretches of this game where I kind of forgot he was out there. And I think that is when you really need someone to step up. Time and time again for Houston, that's been Kingston. Defensively, though, it was nice to have big Chris Cenac involved as well. Comments here, a couple of class 82. Oh, so you're like a little bit younger than my mother, which is, and I don't mean to age you more, like that's my biggest connection to the school here. So, there you go. Shouts to that. That 82 is a heyday. Good job for showing up here. TCU is the ugliest basketball court. I want to ask about the basketball court, and I sent 3 texts out. If you've followed the show for a long time, I am a high school basketball coach. One of the things that is awkward about TCU for me is there's a kid on that team that I did coach someone who was in high school for a period of time. And it feels like I counted 6 times where Houston slipped. And I don't know if it's whatever graphics on the top of that, if it's the weather, new shoes, because a lot of the guys change their shoes after. Houston in general is a very superstitious program. They change their polos, their quarter zips, their uniform. Like, I doubt Houston wears the white throwback again because they lost in it. Like, they do those kinds of things. A lot of guys change their shoes they wear out to games after losses. Did some of that have to do with it? Maybe. But the TCU core was absolutely an eyesore, and it felt like it was also impactful for some. I don't really know. I sent text out asking people what they thought about it because I just don't quite know how to describe that. But it was not great. It was not great. Houston did pull off the win, and haven't checked the post-game press conference. I'm sure Duarte or someone's got quotes of it online right now. I'm sure ultimately Sampson said there's no such something to the effect of there's no such thing as an ugly win. A win is a win is a win. And I think in terms of coaching a basketball team, that's absolutely right. I also think that in terms of you and I qualitatively evaluating this thing, there's other aspects of that, including JoJo Tugler playing just 10 minutes because of foul trouble, a tale that seems as old as time, but is getting really old. And I'm going to talk about that in the second segment and others. But first...
Hi, everyone. I'm Kalia Butler, host of Locked On Women's Basketball, and this is Mazda's Women's Basketball Snapshot, celebrating the work no highlight reel can ever capture. The WNBA has released its 2026 schedule featuring a 44-game regular season beginning on Friday, May 8th. The league's historic 30th season includes expansion teams Portland Fire and the Toronto Tempo, with opening weekend highlights such as Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever hosting Paige Beckers and the Dallas Wings, and a rematch of the 2025 finals between the Aces and the Mercury. In college hoops, South Carolina handed Vanderbilt its first loss of the season with a dominant 103-74 win. These moments are earned off the clock, those long before the lights ever come on. The sweat, the fakes, the doubt, the scrapes, and coming back for more every time. Mazda puts the same drive into every detail. Wins define the moment. Putting in the work, that defines you. There's more to a Mazda because there's more to you.
Welcome back to Locked On Coogs. Now, I want to thank you guys for making us your first listen of the post-game first this morning or anywhere in between. But also, thank you if you're an everyday all-access member. You're just getting a little bit more Locked On Coogs, more than the everyday episode. We're giving you a lot of stuff over the everyday all-access level of this, too. So, lockedonpodcast.com/everyday to learn more. But your favorite shows give you a little bit more each and every day. Ad-free audio, members-only Discord server, special all access episodes. We're talking about some national topics in those and Locked On Cougs lately. One-on-one texting with me, and we'll get into some of those questions that came from the one-on-one texting in just a second. But honestly, I think one interesting thing in this is like this game was never like, look, Sampson does not win a whole lot of pretty games. Let's just be honest with ourselves. But it's really, really ugly when guys like JoJo Tugler are fouling. And one question that came in from an Everyday All Access member was, what are they going to do? The question was, JoJo needs to stop fouling. What are they going to do? And I assumed, and I said I'll answer this on the show, so I assumed that was what are they going to do with him in foul trouble, because JoJo Tugler is legitimately Big 12 Player of the Year caliber defender, if not National Player of the Year caliber defender. He also played just 10 minutes tonight, battling constant foul trouble. And look, I think now that we're in January, we're kind of really almost in February. We're kind of past the point of like the offseason was awkward for him. He didn't get back on a basketball court till late September, early October. I think those are all valid for a lot of the season. It's just at some point we need to have caught up or accept the fact that we're not going to catch up. And I think that it was great to see Chris Cenac step up in his absence in different ways. But ultimately, for this team to hit its ceiling, JoJo Tugler has to be on the floor. There's just no way around it, right? Like he's an integral part of what this defense is. His hustle, his extra possessions, extension of our possessions, all of those things are a big part of how this team's going to win basketball games. Tugler playing just 10 minutes, it almost makes it miraculous that they got out of this thing with a win in some ways. Right now, they won, and so we're not going to try and get too down in the weeds on a win is a win is a win and all of that. But really, I think the deal is that like he gets 4 fouls, and like I comment on Twitter and I try to tweet throughout the game about what my thoughts are going, so people can go back and forth with me if they want and kind of get an idea of what we're going to be talking about. Tugler, his 4th foul was fine. He's competing for the contest. It's a close game at that point. He's late in rotation, but honestly, it was an impossible rotation. He's trying to get there, contest the shot. The individual 4th foul is not one I have a problem with. The issue was he was extra handsy on that 2nd foul. He was slow and with a little extra chest bump and just a little bit extra on the 3rd foul. And when they add up, that makes the 4th foul has like gigantic magnifying glass on it. And I don't know how else to say it besides it's just not acceptable. He's a junior at this point, too. This is not a freshman JoJo Tugler playing 6 men off the bench, or really even a year ago, I think we're kind of understanding how valuable it was to have 3 starting big men between Javier Francis, JoJo Tugler, and Juwan Roberts all on the same team last year, graduating 2 of them. And Chris comes in and starts. He's a starting caliber guy. That's obvious, right? But graduating 2 of them is interesting because when JoJo had these foul trouble guys last year, you still had the 2 starting caliber guys. You don't have that right now, right? Khalifa Sacco is good. He's energy. He's strong. He is a bench rotation big, and I think he'll make big plays in March. I don't mean to say that he won't. I just there's a role there, and it's not the same thing. Whereas last year when Tugler had these foul trouble nights, they'd be like, fine, sit your butt down, JB, go in there, and it would work, right? Like, he was fine. Don't have that right now. Now, the other thing I'll say too is that as much fun as that like hyper competitive JoJo was going for the block on that fourth foul and he got called for it. And again, I said I don't have a problem with that foul individually. When you stack it up with the others, it becomes a problem because it's his fourth foul, right? Um, Ultimately, what he's got to be better at is knowing when he can take that risk because when you've made those other dumb plays, you can't. Now, how do they get better was the real question here. And I think they get better by finding ways to work through this. I think Chris Cenac at the center position tonight looked really strong. I think there's some meat on that bone, so to speak. And I wonder if they keep on diving into that. Now, I do think that you also lose some of his offensive rebounding, and I think this team is at its best with two bigs out there because of the offensive rebounding aspect of it. They're not shooting as well as last year's team did from behind the arc, and so the offensive rebounds would help. I think some of those percentages just from a general field goal shooting percentage, right? And so there's some of that too. But I just, I just feel like ultimately some of this is not just about them, but about him. And you are who you are. You are your Jimmys and Joes, and it's not always about your X's and O's, right? But I think he's got to get right. This team's got to find ways to play around it when he's not, but he's got to get right. Other questions I got from the Everyday All Access members that said I would address. Chris was huge in the first half, then he disappeared. What happened? Now, there was a spurt late defensively that Chris Cenac did show back up. But I got to be honest, when he had 7 points and 10 rebounds at the half, and it was a millisecond away from being 9 and 11. Let's just be real. I was like, okay, like this dude's about to have a double machine monster, whatever. And on offense, second half, he had a free throw. And some of that's because his offensive rebounds turned into kickouts. They were trying to extend clock late. Sure, right? Like that's strategic, schematic. Like you're trying to spin the clock. You don't want to have the quick put back. You want to try and eat 30 seconds off if you can. That's a very Sampson thing to do, right? But I also think that at some point when the offense shifted to, hey, Kingston's got to get downhill, he's not hitting the drop spots in the same kind of ways more veteran guys do. And what I mean by that is like when a guard is attacking, and Milos had really good chemistry with both Francis and Roberts a year ago, but ironically not Tugler quite as much. But when a guard is attacking downhill, bigs have an idea of where their eyes are or where their feelers are, and you get to those drop spots against the soft spot of the defense and kind of find the middle of that Venn diagram where the soft spot of the defense and the guard will see you to get you the ball, right? Those kinds of drops happen a lot. Cenac's still figuring that out, and I think it's weird that he kind of has the best connection on that with Kingston, right? That like the two freshmen have that together, but also he's still figuring out those spots, and it's immediately the kind of thing that like takes a lot of time. I thought for what it's worth, like Milos and Francis got better over the course of the year last year. It wasn't something they had necessarily clicked in January either, right? But I also think that what Cenac brings is this ability to pick and pop and play the outside stuff on offense too. And he does tend to fall in love with that. I think that that's you got to kind of force him to, don't just always pop. You got to hit the roll sometimes, got to get big in the basket sometimes. I also think the more they play him at center, the less he's going to be able to pick and pop because that takes him away from his offensive rebounding spot. They need him in there on that. But I fully expected Chris to have a more impactful offensive side of the second half, and some of that was by design and some of it wasn't. Last but not least is more about the veterans not being as involved. Milos, why is he so MIA? I'm assuming they're not talking about Miami. Look, I mentioned in the first segment, but I'll say it again. He played 39 minutes, and it felt like from a visual perspective, he almost disappeared at times. I don't think he's super comfortable playing as 2 point guards on the floor yet. And I do think that's the kind of thing that you can see fix itself in the course of February as he finds more shots. I talked in the college basketball squad show, which is on, I guess, our feed too, if you want to check that out. But last night, we went for like an hour. At one point I said, though, Milos is really good last year and getting to his floater, and the rest of the game stemmed off of that. When he's not leading with the ball, it feels like he's not getting to that as much. And I really think getting him in more ball screen actions or just getting him downhill where he can get to that floater and work out will actually make his jump shots fall more. I don't have science of this, but I've long believed in basketball once you see the ball go in, it starts to go in more. And for Milos, I think that means that, getting to the rim, getting that floater is going to make the three-pointer fall more. I don't have science to it except for saying that I've seen it work that way the 34 years I've lived on earth, right? And so I think that will be important for him continuing to move. Now, I will say the same way we saw Chris Cenac grow from the Tech game to tonight defensively and in terms of rebounding and some of the physicality things he was doing, I do have faith that the staff is working on these things with Tugler, these things with Milos, and they've kind of earned the benefit of the doubt. If we watch their trajectory each and every year, this team never peaks in January. Sampson's teams just don't. And I fully expect them to be making these strides over the course. Now, do they make them by the time they get to that mid-February stretch where you play like 4 top 10 teams in 10 days? I don't know. I do think that they make these strides appropriately, and I think they'll continue to grow in those ways. I think they've earned that benefit of the doubt. Now, I don't want to act like this is all bad. Houston wins by 9. It was an 8.5-point spread. They're on the road. It's a Big 12 game. Those are all important and good things. But I do want to give out some nightcaps and kind of wrap up this game a little bit. And I got a couple comments here about what people are not or are impressed with. We'll get to that in a second. Before we get to that, today's show is brought to you by our buddies over at Rocket Money. Because, look, let's be real, managing finances can be a little overwhelming. Look, I teach, I coach, I podcast, bunch of subscriptions, bills pile up. But, we're talking, do we need to do something with our AC unit or our house these days? All that is a hard thing to manage, but that's where Rocket Money comes in. The personal finance app that helps take control and finance and cancels your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. I don't think I realized how many different subscriptions we had for various like streaming services. When truthfully, I need like certain ones of them for certain seasons of the year. And so having this to help me track those and when to cancel those and those kind of things was really, really helpful for me. I'm sure we'll do the same for you. Let Rocket Money help you reach your financial goals faster. Join at rocketmoney.com/lockedon. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Park Rangers locked on Coogs here. Thank you for making Locked On Coogs your first listen of the post game next morning or anywhere in between. And if you're an Everyday All Access member, thank you for helping out and being a part of the inner circle, right? A little bit extra Locked On Coogs each and every day. Now, we typically give out nightcaps in the game. Tip the cap or tip the nightcap to different good performances. We've talked about the freshmen. I thought Kingston helped right the ship offensively in a moment where you needed it. I thought Chris Cenac stepped up to the challenge given to him after last game. I think both of those things were obviously a little bit of a nightcap. I think the other one, though, needs to go to Emanuel. Now, Emanuel had 4 fouls, and 2 of his, to me, felt like he had 5 fouls. He fouled out of the game technically at the end. 2 of his fouls, to me, felt like reacting to trying to cover up somebody late. And I think that's one of the moments where like you'll see, we won't see, I guess, in a behind closed doors moment in a film session on the floor in the Guy v. Lewis, or at some moment he's going to say, I had to get taken out of the game because I committed a foul here, like to the point of like, it's your bad. I committed this foul and you're bad. The one that I thought of the most was, I think it was his 4th one. No, it was his 5th one. He's admittedly riding a guy to the baseline, and like he is physically chest on him, whatever, but he is anticipating Chris Cenac sliding over to prevent the shot, right? Like he is anticipating meeting with the jump at the with the circle, what do they call it? The charge circle, whatever, right underneath the basket to help contest the shot. And there will be no shot because Cenac will be there. Cenac ends up actually behind Sharp, who then takes the foul on the chin as he's letting his guys shoot. And Sharp immediately just turns around and starts pointing at things, right? And I think that while that was a negative, that leadership is like extreme positive, right? I think that's one of the things Sharp brings to the team, obviously, as a veteran, as one of the seniors that's been here the entire time, right? Sacco is a senior, but transferred in this year. Uzan is a senior, but transferred in last year. Ramon Walker is a senior, but doesn't have the same pull. He hadn't been on the floor the entire time he's been here, right? He's not the same kind of guy where Sharp's been an impact player since he was eligible. I also think that it's worth pointing out, like, Sharp's plus minus in this game was pretty strong, given his own foul trouble, like we mentioned. 23 points on his own 16 shots, only 2 of 7 behind the arc, which is not like something we usually see him go more like 3 of 7, and sometimes even go 4 of 7 or 5 of 7. 2 of 7 happens. I thought him probably more important though was he was 5 of 5 from the free throw line. He's getting to the rim, attacking the rim, doing those physical things in a game where, let's be honest, it was a tight whistle. A lot of free throw shot. Houston shot 24 free throws in this game. TCU shot 25 free throws in this game. It was going to be a game with a lot of whistles. And in the preview of sorts I did with Darian yesterday, we both talked about how, like, honestly, like, if if either one of these teams were going to get a tight whistle, would not benefit Houston, but really it's going to be a muck it up kind of ugly physical game. TCU had the strength, Houston's got that aggression, right? And both teams shot, like I said, in the mid 20s on free throws. But when Emanuel is doing that, it implies he's attacking the rim as opposed to settling for 3-pointers, and that's something he can do. He can shoot the ball really well and typically, right? So I think it's impressive to see and continue to see that growth. I thought Ramon Walker left a lot to be desired on offense. Don't want to act like that. I thought with all the foul trouble and the McCarty injury, McCarty played less than a minute, right? Ramon Walker played big defense in terms of, like, literally covering big guys in a way that we have kind of gotten to where we take for granted. This team is really kind of down a big functionally. With Jake McFarland still not quite being right, it doesn't feel like. We haven't seen him set a lot, hasn't quite progressed like they needed him to. And then you just got the 3 you've got, and those guys are in foul trouble, so Ramon Walker's got to go out there and do it. Ultimately, I think that's something while we do take advantage of or take for granted sometimes, it was nice to see. Before we get out of here, I want to see a couple of these comments. Chris Mitchell says the last 2 games, my opinion is that the team has lost its connectivity that it had gained, scrambling both on the floor because it's 5 individuals versus 1 team. I think that some of that is having, playing a Big 12 caliber schedule, playing conference opponents means that the scouting report is much thicker, and they know much more about you than the non-conference one-offs. It's also an upper crust of talent. Like your down game in the Big 12 is the Cincinnati, right? Like, it's a good team versus like your down week in your non-conference is, we'll just say, not Cincinnati, right? And so I think that some of that it's kind of putting some pressure on the pipes, so to speak. That seems very front of mind right now. But some pressure on the pipes, so to speak. I also think that the offense has kind of fallen back to, not unlike they did with Jamal Shead. Obviously, it was a very successful team in a lot of ways too. They won the Big 12 and all of that. But when they, go a handful of possessions without hitting a jump shot, it's, hey, Kingston, we need to go get a bucket. I thought they generated really good looks that were jump shots in the first 10 minutes of the second half. They didn't shoot the ball particularly well. They shot 44% from the field. I would be interested to look at a shot chart and see how many of those were from, and what the percentage was in the mid-range. They finished at 39% from 3. There was certainly a stretch there where they missed several in a row, though. And so I think that that's ultimately where those kinds of things, went. Now, lots to break down on this one as things, we'll do a second watch at some point between now and tomorrow night, probably. I still want to get some guys in here to talk about the portal and the additions made there. The football season is, I feel like, never stopping. For what it's worth, we also have a basketball game this weekend to preview and get ready for. So lots of things happening here at Locked on Coogs. And thank you for making Locked on Coogs your first listen to the postgame, or your first listen this morning, or anywhere in between. Locked on Coogs is primarily the Locked On Podcast Network, and that means your team every day. Go Coogs.